Hello, and welcome back to Bombchu. I'm Austin, and today I'll be looking at the Humble Monthly Bundle from September 2019. Can you believe these reviews started 3 years ago in September of 2016? A lot has changed since then, and I want to thank you all for helping me keep this going, whether you joined at the start or this is your first time watching. Now enough of all that, we have a bundle to unpack. This month's Humble Original is Shady Knight. It has no music, so here's some chill license-free music to keep this section poppin'. This game has you ascending towers, defeating enemies, destroying an orb, and then leaving on your boat. Sounds simple, right? Well, you die in one hit or if you fall in the water. There's no checkpoints in each level, and the combat, well, it takes some getting used to. In each level I've played so far, you can pick up a sword stuck in the wall and use it to defend yourself. But it works a little differently than you might expect. You can't just left-click to swing your sword. You have to charge up your attack for a moment. Additionally, certain movements while holding the mouse button down will change your attack, with a jump causing you to jump slash and moving backwards causing you to throw your sword. This can get very frustrating when dealing with an aggressive enemy, as it's hard to prep your attack while backing away without accidentally losing your only defense. But once you get the hang of a tough level, it's pretty satisfying once you trounce that last enemy. Oddly, I was more stressed out going back down the tower than I was dealing with the enemies coming up, as even though the jumps were pretty easy, I knew that one slip up would put me in the water, and I'd have to start all over again. My only design gripes are that the game starts off with its sound set to 0% volume, and when you die to an enemy, there's no prompt to tell you how to respawn, both issues that should be very easy to fix for the developers in the future. Distance is a futuristic sci-fi racing platformer. Your goal in each level is to reach the end. You don't really have a time limit, and you aren't racing anyone, but you do want to go fast, because it feels great and it's often needed to make it over gaps. Over the course of a few levels, you are introduced to your abilities. You can hold A to boost, you can tap X to jump, and by far my favorite, while you're in the air you can tap X again to fly! I was already meshing with this game, but once I was able to fly, that was it. I was done. This game wins best of the bundle for me. You'll also be driving on walls and ceilings, and having to rotate yourself in the air to land on roads with different orientations. It starts to get kind of hard, but it feels really cool when you pull off the right moves, and the checkpoints are very generous most of the time. It's got dope music, and you can really just go into a state of zen. Oh, and it supports VR too? I'm going back to play the rest of this one as soon as I get this video done. Guacamelee 2 is a 2D Metroidvania with luchadors. If you didn't play the first game, don't worry. This one picks up right before the final boss and lets you see the true ending of the first Guacamelee. Things pick up again 7 years later when you are asked to help another timeline where things didn't play out so nicely. As far as gameplay, it's very much a Metroidvania. You unlock moves that allow you to explore new areas or find secret areas with upgrades. Defeating enemies gives you money, which can be spent on trading for perks. Everything is dripping in colorful Mexican culture, as well as jokes, memes, and game references galore. It's a great game for its genre, and so far it seems like it will be a great sequel. I only have one problem with it, and it's the same problem I had with the first game. It's got co-op, but it's local only. Online co-op was a feature fans begged for in the updates and various editions of the first game, so to see it still missing in the sequel is super frustrating. Instead, the developers expanded co-op to 4 players local over 2 players maximum from before. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great game. I just wish I could get more use out of one of its coolest features. These next 2 games I covered at the end of last month's review. If you've already seen my look at Slay the Spire and Squad, you may want to skip ahead. Timestamps for each game are listed down below. Slay the Spire is a roguelike turn-based strategy card game. Absolutely none of these are things that I like, and yet, I'm in love with this game. But why? For one, the interface is simple. You have a wealth of information available to you, and all of it's easy to find when you want it, rather than cluttering up your screen and overwhelming you. It also starts simple. You have a small deck with very uncomplicated cards. Battles are turn-based, and you get to see what the enemy plans to do next, and if it's an attack, how much damage to expect. You can block damage, but any defense you put up that goes unused will be lost when it's your turn again. Cards take energy to play, and your goal is to deplete the enemy's HP while holding on to as much of your own as you can. As you win battles, you get to choose one of 3 cards to add to your deck. This means you get to pick something suited to your playstyle, rather than getting something random and trying to figure out a way to fit it into your play. I ended up building a super defensive deck, with a card to let me keep block points between turns, lots of heavy block cards, a card to double my defense, and best of all, Body Slam, which allows me to attack for the same number of block points I have. Against the boss, I built an impenetrable defense of almost 150 points, threw a Body Slam, and damn near one-shot him. It was super cheesy, and it felt amazing. I loved it. I'm really stoked to play more of this one. Squad is an early access, realistic multiplayer war shooter. It actually plays a lot like Rising Storm 2 from the August bundle, but with better graphics, massive levels, and a huge emphasis on squad play and communication. It's a technical shooter, so you'll have to deal with bullet drop and the like, as well as being slow and cautious and staying in cover a lot. I traveled with my squad in a match for over half an hour, and while they were calling out contacts, I never actually saw an enemy. I got shot at a couple of times, but was never able to tell where from. I got patched up, I served as moral support, but in the end, I had no real contribution to my team. At the very least, I guess I also didn't end up detracting much from them, finally taking my first death about 40 minutes in. If you like technical shooters, you may like this one. It had mostly solid performance outside of some random hitching, and maybe this vibration effect when riding in a car. Not sure if that's intentional or not. Personally, I struggle with technical shooters. This is the thinking man's shooter, and I just don't like thinking a lot when I play shooting games myself. Mothergunship is a procedurally generated gun crafting shooter. If you've ever played Tower of Guns, this is kind of like a follow-up to that game. In each level, you can take one of many paths, but all of them lead to the same end, so you never need to worry about making a wrong choice on where to go. As you prep for each mission, you get to bring gun parts with you, and you can find more in shops sprinkled throughout each level. You have connectors, which have slots that you can use to place other gun barrels, weapon mods, or additional connectors. You can build some pretty silly monstrosities with this system, and the only rules are that gun barrels have to point forward, and objects can't overlap with each other. You gain experience and levels, which can be used to permanently upgrade your character, and dying only loses the gun parts that you're currently carrying, with the rest of them being stored on your ship, so death doesn't come with a huge punishment. I'm not head over heels for the gunplay, and the movement doesn't feel quite perfect, but it does have some pretty unique things that made it pretty fun, and it sports online co-op. I recommend checking it out. State of Mind is a dystopian sci-fi adventure game from Daedalic. Daedalic and I just don't get along. I get really bored playing their games, and out of all of them, this one held my interest the longest, but eventually I was falling asleep because it moves real slow. I'd give you an idea of the story, but it kinda starts off in the middle of things, and a lot of important details are left out. And right when I start to get a grip on what might be going on, it transitions me to a new character, and I'm out of the loop again with more questions than answers. Any tiny moments that grabbed my attention were stomped out by tedious walking around with obnoxious controls, and silly, wait, you can't do that until you do this moments to pad out scenes. However, this game does do a few things right that I have to praise. First, this is one of the best looking Daedalic games I've played. I like the stylized polygonal design, and it makes it look unique. Second, and more importantly, one of my biggest problems with a lot of adventure games is the number of items you can interact with for flavor text. They're often unskippable, you can accidentally click them again later, and they're tedious for me. This is handled wonderfully in State of Mind, as you can see all the objects you can interact with, and you have a dedicated button to bring up flavor text, which doesn't cause any interruption. This is an excellent way to give details to the people who want them without disrupting the game for those who aren't as interested. It's a shame such a great feature went into a game that feels tedious in its core gameplay. God's Trigger is a violent top-down kill-them-all game in the vein of Hotline Miami. You play as an angel and a demon partnering up to save the world. Each character has a default melee attack, though you can pick up weapons from the enemies you kill, You can dash forward as the angel, or teleport forward as the demon, and both of them have their own special skills, starting out with invisibility for the hunk from heaven, and mind control for the Lady of Lucifer. You can swap to either character at the push of a button, and any kills you get will give that character experience to level up. It's a little weird leveling them up separately, but it forces you to switch them out every once in a while if you want to keep them about even. The intended way to play seems to be co-op, with each character being played at the same time. And honestly, I wish that was how I played it, because single player was a bit underwhelming. It's not a bad game by any means, but there are a lot of options to keep track of, and that's on top of a few gripes I had with the game outside of character switching. Unlike Hotline Miami, this game has checkpoints, and they are very generous, but I found myself dying over and over on certain sections for what felt like the wrong reasons. To the point that I preferred losing all my progress in Hotline Miami while having gameplay that felt fair to where I understood what I had done wrong when I died. There were often times when I would press an attack button and nothing would happen. I know there's a cooldown between attacks, but it seemed like anytime I did a stealth kill, the cooldown was insanely long. It also doesn't help that the controls are kinda strange, and there's no way to change them in-game. Even worse, your melee button changes to a different button if you pick up a ranged weapon. This got me killed a good number of times. God's Trigger is not a bad game, and if you've got someone to play it with in co-op, or just have been itching for more Hotline Miami style games, you could do a lot worse than this. But there are also games out there that do the single player much better, like Mr. Shifty, or heck, going back to play Hotline Miami again, which I think I might just do. So overall, how was this bundle? I'll go ahead and say that Distance was a total delight, and was worth it on its own for me. Slay the Spire took me out of my comfort zone and made me realize I don't have to hate deck-building roguelites. Not every game is a hit, but the only game that I think will go unplayed by a lot of subscribers is State of Mind, which still, I'm sure, has its niche in the subscriber base too. There was a good mix of genres, but oddly there were no AAA titles this month. So how much bang for your buck was there? Getting all these at full price would cost about $180, while getting them all at their lowest sale price from Steam would cost just shy of $75. I'd say this is the most excited I've been for a bundle in a bit. Next month's early unlock is BattleTech. Let's take a sneak peek. BattleTech is a turn-based strategy mech game set in the tabletop universe of the same name. On its surface, it doesn't seem very complicated. Click your mechs and move them to where you want them to go. Attack from strategic locations, such as taking cover in trees and hitting enemies from behind. However, there are a lot of mechanics that go unexplained, with complicated systems causing status effects and bars that I don't know what to make of. Still, I was able to get through initial battles without much trouble, but good god, levels just go on forever, with battles against tons of enemies taking several turns. Then you walk forward a bit and suddenly enemies spawn next to you, so there's often no strategic way to enter a battle. It's a tactical game that often throws tactics out the window. It has a season pass that is more expensive than the game, with DLC that isn't highly rated, and even the positive reviews seem to suggest that the base version of the game is not very good and suggest that you use mods to fix it. If you have nothing better to do and want to slog away for hours against stupid numbers of enemies, or you're really into BattleTech lore, have at it, but this one gets a pass from me. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. After 3 years, we're closing in on 5,000 subscribers, and I'm hoping to hit that number before the end of this year. So if you aren't subscribed, consider clicking that button. It's totally free, and it helps us a ton. We also have a Discord server where we talk about dumb stuff, do giveaways, and generally have a good time. There's a link to that down below. Finally, a big thank you to Gabriel Skaggs, Michael Slater, Sort My Games, and all our patrons over on Patreon. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I didn't even play Civ 3. Oh man, I bet this goes to the lockbox. Come on, please work.
What the f-